We're now on the fourth of 5 methods for working with distracting thoughts. So we've actually put a lot of effort so far into getting this thought that we recognize out of our mind. And so the fourth method is called stilling the thought formation of thoughts. And that's, I think, how this sutra got its title. So we'll read what the sutra says about this. And so remember, this is the sutra called the removal of distracting thoughts. So this is the 6th section on it. Okay. If, while he is trying to forget those thoughts and is not giving attention to them, there still arise in him unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, or any of the 5 hindrances or whatever, then he should give attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts. And this word in Pali is vitaka, sankhara, santanam. And sankhara here means condition, cause, or root. And so it's kind of like you're stopping the cause of the thought, is how this is taken. And there's a little more they say on that in the commentary. So then we go back to the sutra. When he gives attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, then any unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. And now comes the simile. Just as a man walking fast might consider, why am I walking fast? What if I walk slowly? And he would walk slowly. Then he might consider, why am I walking slowly? What if I stand? And he would stand. Then he might consider, why am I standing? What if I sit? And he would sit. Then he might consider, why am I sitting? What if I lie down? And he would lie down. By doing so, he would substitute for each grosser posture one that was subtler. So too, when a monastic gives attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. And so then when they talk about this, they talk about what you're doing actually is you're kind of looking at the cause or the root of the thoughts. And I think that one way, I was thinking about how we've been trained here, one way that I see that we've been taught this is, I find quite effective, and it's like this. It's like you're looking what's behind the thoughts. Why am I thinking this? Is what Bhikkhu Bodhi says. But what Venerable Chodron has said many times is like when we're angry at somebody, she'll say to herself, well, yes, this and this and this happened, but why am I angry? So it's this thing of kind of stepping back, stepping back, stepping back. And then she might take it another point, like, who's angry? And then she'll take it back another, and then it's like, who? So this is, in a way, the same, is kind of a similar idea. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to kind of ask yourself, well, what's underlying these disturbing thoughts that I'm having, and look at the chain of causation. What's the cause for this thought, and what's the cause for the cause of that thought? And so this is one explanation in the commentaries. Bhikkhu Bodhi had a different alternative explanation, and this is maybe more how he uses this, in that he would just kind of watch his thoughts and watching them flow, and just kind of maybe stepping outside a little bit and observing the thoughts, not trying to focus, he said, on the breath or the sensations of the body or anything else, but just observing the flow of thoughts, watching them flow by, flow by, flow by, and then gradually his mind would slow down, slow down, slow down. So he took it more that way. So then for him it was like, why should I let myself think these thoughts? He would kind of slow down and come to that point. And so I think then he would say, well, why am I engaging in this stream of thoughts? So he'd let them kind of slow down and come to a standstill on their own. And so that was his take on this. And then the 5th method is one that the Buddha actually used when he was doing ascetic practices, and it's described in another sutra quite briefly. I looked at that reference, but it didn't say too much about it. And it's one that he didn't really advocate in general, but he did put it as a fifth method here, and it's kind of like a last resort, basically. So this is actually telling us that we don't want to use this kind of method most of the time. It's really a last resort kind of thing. It's called crushing mind with mind. So it's a very forceful kind of suppression where you use like a wholesome thought to kind of crush this unwholesome thought. And so what the sutra says on that is, if while he is giving attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, there still arise in him unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, then with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he should beat down, constrain, and crush mind with mind. So he should crush the unwholesome state of mind with a wholesome state of mind, is what the footnote says. So then, with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he beats down, constrains, and crushes mind with mind. Then any unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. And then the simile comes. Just as a strong man might seize a weaker man by the head or shoulders and beat him down, constrain him, and crush him, so too, when with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of the mouth, you beat down, constrain these thoughts and become steadied. And so obviously that's one that it's, I think, interesting that the Buddha had kind of thrown out as a method. I think that's telling us that we usually can go wrong when we try to suppress our thoughts, and we should use these other methods first. But he didn't take it out completely. And I feel sometimes when I've examined something fully, and I'm sure I'm not kind of suppressing it in the Western sense of the word of not being aware of it, but when I've examined something fully, and then that comes up in my mind, there's a place in my mind that just, and I've heard many people here say this, where you just kind of go, you know, I'm not going there, you know, with a little bit of force. And it's not like maybe the words, it doesn't feel as intense to me, my experience, because I don't think I would be wanting to do something that forceful. But when I've kind of thought through something, I know this is a habit of mind or whatever, then there comes a place in me that just kind of is more decisive and firm and just says, okay, this isn't the time for that. Let's out of here and put my mind on something else. And that I find works when I've examined something at length. I don't find that method very helpful before that point, because usually I have got more to learn about something before then. So just in conclusion, what the Buddha says here is, then this monk is then, once you've been able to do this all, is then called a master of the courses of thought. He will think whatever he wishes to think and will not think any thought that he does not wish to think. He has severed craving, flung off the fetters, and with complete penetration of conceit, he has made an end of suffering. And this is what the Blessed One said, and the bhikkhus and monastics were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So this is one way of reaching a point of concentration where you can then penetrate into the meaning of reality and liberate yourself from samsara. And it actually helps a lot with day-to-day life as well. And what I like about this sutra in particular is I like the image of the similes and trying to look at my own practice and the ways, realizing that there's a variety of ways to work with distractions. I think that's the main thing I learned from studying this sutra, is like it's not all just kind of label it and focus back on the breath, because that definitely there hasn't been one way that worked for me always. So I've needed a bigger variety of skills, and it's kind of that adage of, if you only have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I feel like you need a much bigger toolbox to work with the mind, and so this is just giving us a little bit of guidance in some ways to go about this. So I hope it's helpful.